The Book of Lamentations, Ekah. Chapter 1. How alone she sits, the city once great with people. Like a widow she has become, one great among the nations. A princess among provinces has become a slave. She weeps bitterly at night, and her tears are upon her cheeks. Among all her lovers there is no comforter for her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. Yehudah has gone into exile because of affliction and because of harsh labor. She has dwelt among nations. She has found no rest. All her pursuers have overtaken her between narrow places. The ways to Zion mourn, for no one comes to the appointed times. All her gates are deserted. Her priests sigh. Her maidens are afflicted, and she has bitterness. Her adversaries have become chief. Her enemies have become at ease, for Yahuwah has afflicted her because of her many transgressions. Her children have gone into captivity before the enemy, and all the splendor has departed from the rulers of Zion. Her rulers have become like buck. They have found no pasture, and they go powerless before the pursuer in the days of her affliction and wandering. Jerusalem remembered all her precious matters she had in the days of old, when her people fell into the hand of the enemy, with no one to help her. The adversaries saw her, they mocked at her destruction. Jerusalem has sinned greatly, therefore she has become defiled. All who esteemed her despised her, because they have seen her nakedness. She herself has sighed and turned away, her uncleanness is in her skirts. She did not keep in mind her latter end, and has gone down appallingly. There was no one to comfort her. See, O Yahuwah, my affliction, for the enemy has made himself great. The adversary has spread his hand over all her precious matters. Indeed, she has seen. The nations have entered her set-apart place, those whom you commanded not to enter your assembly. All her people are sighing, seeking bread. They have given their precious matters for food to bring back life. See, O Yahuwah, and look, for I have become despised. Is it not to you, all you who pass by? Look and see if there is any pain like my pain, which has been brought on me, which Yahuwah has inflicted on me. In the day of his burning displeasure, from above he has sent fire into my bones, and it overpowered them. He has spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He has laid me waste and faint all the day. The yoke of my transgressions have been bound by his hand, woven together and thrust upon my neck. He has made my strength stumble. Yahuwah has given me into hands which I am unable to withstand. Yahuwah has trodden down all my strong men in my midst. He has called an appointed time against me to crush my own young men. Yahuwah has trodden down as in a winepress the maiden daughter of Yehudah. This is why I weep. My eye is running down with water because the Comforter, who could bring back my life, has been far from me. My children are stunned, for the enemy has prevailed. Zion spreads out her hands. There is no comforter for her. Yahuwah has commanded concerning Jacob. His neighbors are his adversaries. Jerusalem has become an uncleanness among them. Yahuwah is righteous, for I rebelled against his mouth. Hear now, all peoples, and see my pain. My maidens and my young men have gone into captivity. I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. My priests and my elders breathed their last in the city, while they sought food to bring back their life. See, O Yahuwah, that I am in distress. My inward parts are boiling up. My heart is overturned within me. For I have been very rebellious. From without the sword has bereaved. At home it is like death. They have heard that I sighed, with no one to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my calamity. They have rejoiced that you have done it. You shall bring on the day that you have announced. So let them become like me. Let all their evil come before you, and do to them as you have done to me. For all my transgressions, for my sighs are many, and my heart is faint. Chapter 2. How Yahuwah, in his displeasure, has covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud. He has cast down from the heavens to the earth the comeliness of Yisrael, and has not remembered his footstool in the day of his displeasure. Yahuwah has swallowed up without compassion all the pastures of Jacob. In his wrath he has thrown down the strongholds of the daughter of Yehudah. He has brought them down to the ground. He has profaned the reign and its rulers. In the heat of displeasure he has cut off every horn of Yisrael. He has withdrawn his right hand from before the enemy. And he burns against Jacob like a flaming fire, consuming all around. He has bent his bow like an enemy. He has set his right hand like an adversary. And he kills all who delighted the eye. In the tent of the daughter of Zion he has poured out his wrath like fire. Yahuwah has been like an enemy. He has swallowed up Yisrael. He has swallowed up all her palaces. He has destroyed her strongholds. And he increases mourning and lamentation. In the daughter of Yehudah he has demolished his booth like a garden. He has destroyed his place of meeting. Yahuwah has made the appointed times and Sabbaths to be forgotten in Zion, and despises sovereign and priest in his raging displeasure. Yahuwah has cast off his slaughter place. He has rejected his set-apart place. He has delivered the walls of her palaces into the hand of the enemy. They have made a noise in the house of Yahuwah, as on the day of an appointed time. Yahuwah has planned to destroy the wall of the daughter of Zion. He has stretched out a line. He has not turned back his hand from destroying. And he has made the rampart and wall to lament. Together they have languished. Her gates have sunk into the ground. He has destroyed and broken her bars. Her sovereign and her rulers are among the nations. The Torah is no more. And her prophets have found no vision from Yahuwah. The elders of the daughter of Zion sit on the ground, are silent. They have thrown dust on their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The maidens of Jerusalem have let their heads hang to the ground. My eyes are spent with tears. My inward parts ferment. My bile has been poured on the ground because of the destruction of the daughter of my people. As children and the infants languish in the streets of the city, they say to their mothers, "Where is grain and wine?" As they languish like the wounded in the streets of the city, and their life is poured out in their mother's bosom. How shall I admonish you? To what shall I compare you, O daughter of Jerusalem? To what shall I liken you to comfort you, O maiden daughter of Zion? For your breach is as great as the sea. Who shall heal you? Your prophets have been seen, falsehood and folly for you, and have not shown you your crookedness, to turn back your captivity, but their visions for you are false and misleading messages. All who pass by have clapped their hands at you. They have whistled, and they shake their heads at the daughter of Jerusalem. Is this the city that is called the perfection of loveliness, the joy of all the earth? All your enemies have opened their mouths against you. They have whistled, and they gnash their teeth. They say, "We have swallowed her up. This is certainly the day we waited for. We have found it. We have seen it." Yahuwah has done what he planned. He has filled his word which he commanded in days of old. He has torn down without compassion, and he has let your enemy rejoice over you. He has exalted the horn of your adversaries. Their heart cried out to Yahuwah, "O wall of the daughter of Zion, let tears run down like a river day and night. Give yourself no numbness. Let your eyes have no rest. Arise, cry out in the night at the beginning of the watches. Pour out your heart like water before the face of Yahuwah. Lift your hands toward him for the life of your young children, who languish from hunger at the head of every street. See, O Yahuwah, and look attentively to whom you have done thus. Should the woman eat their offspring, infants of a handbreadth? Should the priest and prophet be killed in the set-apart place of Yahuwah? Young and old lie on the ground in the streets. My maidens and my young men have fallen by the sword. You have killed them in the day of your displeasure. You have slaughtered without compassion. Would you proclaim as in a day of appointed time? The fears that surround me, and no one escaped or survived. In the day of the displeasure of Yahuwah, Those whom I have nursed and brought up, my enemy has destroyed. Chapter 3. I am the man who has seen affliction. By the rod of his wrath he has led me and made me walk in darkness and not light. Indeed, he has turned back. He has turned his hand against me all the day. He has worn out my flesh and my skin. He has broken my bones. He has piled up against me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in dark places like the dead of old. He has hedged me in, and I do not go out. He has made my chain heavy. Also, when I cry and shout, he shuts out my prayer. He has blocked my ways with hewn stone. He has made my paths crooked. He is to me like a bear lying in wait, a lion in hiding. He has turned aside my ways and torn me in pieces. He has laid me waste. He has bent his bow and set me up as a target for the arrow. He made the arrows of his quiver pierce my kidneys. I have been a mockery to all my people, their mocking song all the day. He has filled me with bitterness. He drenched me with wormwood, and he has broken my teeth with gravel. He has covered me with ashes, and you have removed my being far from me. I have forgotten goodness, and I said, my strength and my expectancy have perished from Yahuwah. Remember my affliction and my anguish, the wormwood and the gall. Your being indeed remembers and bows down upon me. This I recall to my mind, therefore I wait the loving commitments of Yahuwah. For we have not been consumed, for his compassions have not ended. They are new every morning. Great is your trustworthiness. Yahuwah is my portion, says my being. Therefore I wait for him. Yahuwah is good to those waiting for him, to the being who seeks him. It is good both to wait and to be silent for the deliverance of Yahuwah. It is good for a man to bear a yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone and be silent, because he has laid it on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. There might yet be expectancy. Let him give his cheek to the one who strikes him. He is filled with reproach. For Yahuwah does not cast off forever. For though he afflicted, yet he shall show compassion, according to the greatness of his loving commitments. For he has not afflicted from his heart, nor does he grieve the children of men, to crush under his feet all the prisoners of the earth, to turn aside the right ruling of man before the face of the Most High, or wrong a man in his cause. This Yahuwah does not approve. Who was it that spoke, and it came to be? Has Yahuwah not commanded it? Do not the evils and the good come out of the mouth of the Most High? What? Should mankind complain, a living man, because of his sins? Let us search and examine our ways and turn back to Yahuwah. Let us lift our hearts and hands to El in the heavens and say, We have transgressed and rebelled. You have not forgiven. You have wrapped yourself with displeasure and pursued us. You have killed. You have not shown compassion. You have wrapped yourself with a cloud so that prayer does not pass through. You make us as scum and refuse in the midst of the peoples. All our enemies have opened their mouth against us. Fear and a snare have come upon us. Shame and ruin. Streams of water run down my eye for the ruin of the daughter of my people. My eyes flow out and does not cease without stopping, until Yahuwah looks down and sees from the heavens. My eye pains my being because of all the daughters of my city. My enemies hunted me down like a bird without cause. They have cut off my life in the pit, and they threw stones at me. Waters flowed over my head. I said, I am cut off. I called on your name, O Yahuwah, from the lowest pit. You have heard my voice. Do not hide your ear from my groaning, from my outcry. You drew near on the day I called on you. You said, do not fear. O Yahuwah, you did plead the case for my being. You have redeemed my life, O Yahuwah. You have seen my oppression. Judge my case. You have seen all their vengeance, all their plans against me. You have heard their reproach. O Yahuwah, all their plans against me. The lips of those rising against me, and they're scheming against me all the day. Look at their sitting down and their rising up. I am their song. Repay them, O Yahuwah, according to the work of their hands. Give them a veiled heart, your curse upon them. Pursue and destroy them in displeasure from under the heavens of Yahuwah. Chapter 4. How dim the gold has become, the fine gold changed. The stones of the set-apart place are scattered at the head of every street. The precious sons of Zion, who were weighed against fine gold, they have been reckoned as clay pots, the work of the hands of the potter. Even jackals have presented their breasts. They have nursed their young. The daughters of my people has become as cruel as ostriches in the wilderness. The tongue of the infant has clung to the roof of its mouth for thirst. Children asked for bread. No one breaks it for them. Those who ate delicacies have been laid waste in the streets. Those who were brought up in scarlet have embraced dunghills. And the crookedness of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment, and no hands were wrung over her. Her Nazarites were brighter than snow, and whiter than milk, more ruddy in body than rubies. They're cut like sapphire. Their appearance has become blacker than soot. They have become unrecognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones. It has become dry. It has become as wood. Better off were those pierced by the sword than those pierced by hunger, for these pine away, pierced through for lack of the fruits of the field. The hands of the compassionate women have boiled their own children. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. Yahuwah has completed his wrath. He has poured out his burning displeasure, and he kindled a fire in Zion, and it consumed her foundations. The sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any inhabitants of the world, that an adversary, an enemy would enter the gates of Jerusalem. It was because of the sins of her prophets, the crookednesses of her priests, who shed in her midst the blood of the righteous. They staggered, blind in the streets. They have defiled themselves with blood, so that no one was able to touch their garments. They shouted at them, "Away, unclean! Away, away, touch not!" When they fled and staggered, they said among the nations, "They shall sojourn no longer." The face of Yahuwah scattered them. He no longer regards them. They showed no respect for the priests, nor favor to the elders. While we exist, our eyes are consumed, watching vainly for our help. In our watchtower, we watch for a nation that could not save. They have hunted our steps from going in our streets. Our end was near. Our days were completed, for our end had come. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles of the heavens. They came hotly after us on the mountains, and lay in wait for us in the wilderness. The breath of our nostrils, the anointed of Yahuwah, was caught in their pits, in whose shadows we had thought to live among the nations. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, you who dwell in the land of Uz. The cup is to pass over to you too, so that you become drunk and make yourself naked. Your crookedness has been completed, O daughter of Zion. He no longer prolongs your exile. He shall punish your crookedness, O daughter of Edom. He shall uncover your sins. Chapter 5. Remember, O Yahuwah, what has come upon us. Look and see our reproach. Our inheritance has been turned over to strangers, and our houses to foreigners. We have become orphans, fatherless. Our mothers are like widows. We had to pay for our drinking water, and our wood comes at a price. We have been pursued close onto our neck. We have labored and had no rest. To Mitzrayim we have given a hand, to Asher to be satisfied with bread. Our fathers sinned, they are no more. We have borne their crookednesses. Servants have ruled over us. There is no one to deliver from their hand. With our lives we bring in our bread, because of the sword of the wilderness. Our skin has become as hot as an oven, because of the burning heat of scarcity of food. They have humbled the women in Zion. The maidens in the cities of Yehuda, rulers were hung up by their hands. The elders were not respected. They have taken young men to grind, and youth stumbled under loads of wood. Elders have ceased from the gate, young men from their song. The joy of our heart has ceased. Our dancing has turned into mourning. The crown has fallen from our head. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Because of this, our heart has been sick. Because of these, our eyes have become dim. Because of Mount Zion, which is laid waste, foxes have gone roaming in it. You, O Yahuwah, remain forever, your throne from generation to generation. Why do you forget us forever? Forsake us for length of days. Turn us back to you, O Yahuwah, and let us turn back. Renew our days as of old. For have you completely rejected us? You have been wroth with us exceedingly. The Book of Ecclesiastes, Convener, Koheleth. Chapter 1. The words of Koheleth, son of David, sovereign in Jerusalem. Futility, futility, says Koheleth. Futility, futility. All is futile. What does man gain from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? A generation passes away, and a generation comes, but the earth stands forever. The sun also rises, and the sun sets, and hurries back to the place where it arose, going to the south and turning round to the north, turning, and on its rounds the wind returns. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea never overflows. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. All matters are wearisome. No one is able to speak of it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what shall be. What has been done is what shall be done, and there is no new matter under the sun. Is there a matter of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It was here already long ago. There is no remembrance of former ones, nor is there any remembrance of those that are to come by those who come later on. I, Koheleth, was sovereign over Yisrael in Jerusalem. I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heavens. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of man, to be humbled by it. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and see all was futile and feeding on wind. The crooked could not be straightened, and what was lacking could not be counted. So I spoke to my heart, saying, See, I have attained greatness, and have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. And my heart has seen much wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I know that this too is feeding on wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases suffering. Chapter 2. I said in my heart, Come now, let me try you with rejoicing and find out what is good. But see, that too is futile. I said of laughter, It is madness. And of rejoicing, what does it do? I searched in my heart how to stimulate my body with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, until I could see what was good for the sons of men to do under the heavens all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made pools of water for myself, to water from them a plantation of growing trees. I bought male and female servants, and I came to have sons of the household. Also I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasures of sovereigns and of the provinces. I provided male and female singers for myself, and the pleasures of men, of women, and women. Thus I became great, and increased more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and all that my eyes desired I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion from all my labor. But when I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, see, all was futile and feeding on wind, and there was no gain under the sun. And I turned myself to look at wisdom, and madness, and folly. For what would the man do who comes after the sovereign, except what already has been done? Then I saw that wisdom is better than folly, as light is better than darkness. The wise one's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And I also knew that one event befalls them all. And I said in my heart, as the event of the fool, even so it befalls me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is futile. For there is no more lasting remembrance of the wise than of the fool, since in the days to come all is forgotten. And how does a wise man die? With the fool. And I hated life because the work that was done under the sun was evil on me. For all is futile and feeding on wind. And I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I leave it to a man who would come after me. And who knows whether he is wise or foolish? Yet he shall rule over all my labor in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. That too is futile. So I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For a man might labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he leaves his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. That too is futile and a great evil. For what does a man get for all his labor and strain of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sufferings and his work grievous. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. That too is futile. A man could do no better but to eat and drink and enjoy himself in his labor. That too I saw was from the hand of Elohim. For who eats or who finds enjoyment without him? For he gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his eyes. But to the sinner he gives the task of gathering and collecting, to give to him who is good before Elohim. That too is futile and feeding on wind. Chapter 3. For every matter there is an appointed time, even a time for every pursuit under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for battle and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the task Elohim has given to the sons of men to be humbled by it. He has made it all beautiful in its time. Even the ages he has put in their hearts, except that no one finds out the work that Elohim does from beginning to end. I know that there is no good for them but to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is a gift of Elohim. I know that whatever Elohim does is forever. There is no adding to it and there is no taking from it. Elohim does it, that men should fear before him. Whatever is has already been, and what shall be has been before. But Elohim seeks out what has been pursued. Then again I saw under the sun, in the place of right ruling, wrongness was there. And in the place of righteousness, wrongness was there. I said in my heart, Elohim judges the righteous and the wrong, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart concerning the matter of the sons of men, Elohim selects them, so as to see that they themselves are beasts. For the event of the sons of men is also the event of beasts. One event befalls them. As one dies, so dies the other. Indeed, they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over beasts, for all is futile. All are going to one place. All came from the dust, and all return to the dust. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men which goes upward, and the spirit of the beast which goes down to the earth? So I saw that man could do no better, but to rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who would bring him to see what shall be after him? Chapter 4. Then I looked again at all the oppression that is done under the sun, and see, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter, and power on the side of their oppressors, but they have no comforter. Therefore I commended the dead who are already dead, more than the living who are still alive. And better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. And I saw that all the toil and skill of the work bring envy between man and his neighbor. That too is futile and feeding on wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. Better is a hand filled with rest than both hands filled with toil and feeding on wind. Then I looked again at futility under the sun. There is one without a second, who has neither son nor brother, and there is no end to all his labors. His eye also is not satisfied with riches, and for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of good? That too is futility and an evil task. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one lifts his companion up. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how does one keep warm by himself? Although one might be overpowered, two withstand him, and a threefold cord is not readily broken. A poor and wise youth is better than an old and foolish sovereign, who no longer knows how to take warning. For he comes out of prison to be sovereign, although in his reign he was born poor. I have seen all the living who walk under the sun. They were with the second youth who stands in his place. There was no end of all the people, all of whom he headed. But the ones who come afterward do not rejoice in him, for that too is futile and feeding on wind. Chapter 5. Guard your steps when you go to the house of Elohim, and draw near to listen rather than to give the slaughtering of fools, for they do not know that they do evil. Do not be hasty with your mouth, and let not your heart hurry to bring forth a word before Elohim. For Elohim is in the heavens, and you on the earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes through the greatness of the task, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. When you make a vow to Elohim, do not delay to pay it, for he takes no pleasure in fools. Pay that which you have vowed. It is better not to vow than to vow and not pay. Do not allow your mouth to cause your flesh to sin, nor say before the messenger of Elohim that it was a mistake. Why should Elohim be wroth at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For in much dreaming and many words there is futility. But fear Elohim. If you see the oppression of the poor and denial of right ruling and righteousness in a province, do not be astonished at the matter. For a higher than the high is guarding, and there are higher ones over them. And the increase of the land is for all. The sovereign himself is served from the field. He who loves silver is not satisfied with silver, nor he who loves wealth and increase. That too is futile. With the increase of goods there is an increase of those consuming them. What advantage then is there to their owners but to look on? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the plenty of the rich does not let him sleep. There is a sickly evil I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner, for his evil. But those riches perish through evil use, and he brings forth a son, and there is naught in his hand. As he came naked from his mother womb, so he returns to go as he came. And from his labor which goes into his hand, he takes none whatsoever. And this too is a grievous evil. Exactly as he came, so he goes. And what gain has he since he toiled for the wind? All his days he also eats in darkness, and with much sorrow and sickness and wrath. See what I have seen? It is good and beautiful for one to eat and drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor in which he toils under the sun, all the days of his life which Elohim gives him, for it is his portion. Further, when Elohim has given any man riches and wealth and permitted him to enjoy them, and to receive his portion and rejoice in his labor, this is a gift of Elohim. Though it not be much, let him remember the days of his life, because Elohim bears witness by the gladness of his heart. Chapter 6. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is great among men, a man to whom Elohim has given riches and wealth and esteem, so that his being lacks none at all of what he desires. But Elohim does not permit him to eat of it, and a foreigner consumes it. This is futile, and it is an evil disease. If a man brings forth 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his being is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial place, I say that a premature birth is better than he. For it comes in futility and goes away in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Even the sun it has not seen. It has more rest than that man. And though he lives 1,000 years twice over, yet he shall not see goodness. Do not all go to one place? All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise over the fool? What advantage does the poor have who knows how to walk before the living? What the eyes see is better than what the desire goes after. That too is futile and feeding on the wind. Whatever shall be has already been named, and it is known that he is son of Adam. And he is unable to contend with him who is mightier than he. The more words, the more futility. What is to man the advantage? For who knows what is good for man in life? All the days of his futile life, which he passes like a shadow. For who declares to man what shall be after him under the sun? Chapter 7. A good name is better than precious oil, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living take it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the face the heart becomes better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. That too is futile. For oppression makes a wise one mad, and a bribe destroys the heart. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Do not be hasty in your spirit to be vexed, for vexation rests in the bosom of fools. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For it is not wise of you to have asked about this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and an advantage to those who see the sun. For wisdom protects as silver protects. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. See the work of Elohim, for who is able to make straight what he has made crooked? Be glad in the day of prosperity, but in the evil day take note that Elohim has appointed the one as well as the other, so that man should not uncover whatever shall be after him. I have seen it all in my days of futility. There is a righteous one perishing in his righteousness, and there's a wrong one living long in his evil. Do not be over-righteous, neither be otherwise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of this, and also not withhold your hand from the other. For he who fears Elohim comes forth with all of them. Wisdom makes the wise strong, more than 10 rulers that are in the city. For there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin. Also, do not take to heart all the words they speak, lest you hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you have cursed others. All this I have proved by wisdom. I said, I am wise. But it was far from me. That which is far off and exceedingly deep. Who does find it? I have turned round even my heart to know and to search, and to seek out wisdom and a conclusion, to know the wrongness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. And I found more bitter than death. The woman whose heart it snares and nets, whose hands are shackles. He who pleases Elohim escapes from her, but the sinner is captured by her. See, this I have found, says Koheleth, counting one by one to find a conclusion, which my being seeks, but have not found. I have found one man among 1,000, but a woman among all these I have not found. Truly this only I have found, that Elohim made man straight, but they have sought out many devices. Chapter 8. Who is like a wise one, and who knows the meaning of a matter? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardiness of his face is changed. I say, guard the sovereign's commands because of the oath before Elohim. Do not be in a hurry to go from his presence. Do not take a stand in any evil matter, for he does whatever he pleases. Where the word of a sovereign is, there is power. And who says to him, "What are you doing?" He who guards the command knows no evil matter. And the heart of the wise discerns both time and right ruling. Because for every matter there is a time and right ruling, though the trouble of man is heavy upon him. For he does not know what shall be, so who declares to him when it shall be? No one has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, and no one has power in the day of death. There is no discharge in battle, and wrongness does not release those who are given to it. All this I have seen. I applied my heart to every work that is done under the sun. There is a time in which a man rules over a man for his evil. And so I saw the wrong ones buried, and they came and went from the place of set apartness. And they were forgotten in the city where they had done so. That too is futile, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. Therefore the heart of the sons of men is filled in them to do evil. Although a sinner is doing evil 100 times, and his life is prolonged, yet I know that there is good to those who fear Elohim, who fear before him. But it shall not be well with the wrong one, nor would he prolong his days as a shadow, because he does not fear before Elohim. There is a futility which has been done on earth, that there are righteous ones who get according to the deeds of the wrong, but there are wrong ones who get according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that too is futile. Therefore I praised enjoyment, because there is no good to man except to eat, and to drink, and to rejoice. And he remains with him in his labor for the days of his life, which Elohim has given him under the sun. When I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to see the task which has been done on earth, even though one sees no sleep, day or night, then I saw all the work of Elohim, that man is unable to find out the work that has been done under the sun. For though a man labors to seek, yet he does not find it. And even though a wise one claims to know, he's unable to find it. Chapter 9. For all this I took to heart, even to search out all this, that the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of Elohim. No man knows whether love or hatred awaits him. It is the same for all, one event to the righteous and to the wrong, to the good and to the clean, and to the unclean, and to the one slaughtering and to the one not slaughtering. As is the good one, so is the sinner. The one swearing is the one fearing an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun. There is one event to all. Truly the hearts of the sons of men are filled with evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live, and then to the dead. But for him who is joined to all the living there is trust, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not, nor do they have any more reward, for their remembrance is forgotten. Also their love and their hatred and their envy have now perished, and they no longer have a share in all that is done under the sun. Go, eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a glad heart, for Elohim has already approved your works. Let your garments be white at all times, and let your head lack no oil. See life with the wife whom you love all the days of your futile life, which he has given you under the sun, all your days of futility, for that is your share in life, and in your toil which you have labored under the sun. All that your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol where you are going. I again saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the mighty, nor even bread to the wise, nor even riches to the men of understanding. Even favor to men of knowledge, for time and chance meets with them all. For even man does not know his time. Like fish taken in an evil net, and like birds caught in a snare, so the sons of men are snared in an evil time when it comes down on them suddenly. All this I saw as wisdom under the sun, and it is great to me. a little city and few men in it, and a great sovereign came against it, and besieged it, and built huge siege works against it. And there was found in it a poor wise man, and by his wisdom he delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that poor man. And I said, Wisdom is better than might, but the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heard. The words of the wise, spoken calmly, should be heard rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of conflict, but one sinner destroys much good. Chapter 10. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment stink, ferment. A little folly outweighs wisdom, esteem. A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart at his left. And also when a fool walks along the way, his heart fails, and he shows everyone that he is a fool. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post, for calmness lays to rest great faults. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, as a mistake coming from the ruler. Folly is set in many high positions, while the rich sit in a humble place. I have seen servants on horses and rulers walking on the ground like servants. He who digs a pit falls into it, and whoever breaks through a wall is bitten by a snake. He who quarries stones is hurt by them. He who splits wood is endangered by it. If an iron tool is blunt, and one does not sharpen the edge, then he needs more strength, and wisdom is advantageous to make right. If the snake bites without enchantment, then the master of the tongue is no better. Words of a wise man's mouth show favor, but the lips of a fool swallow him up. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is wicked madness. And a fool increases words. A man knows not what shall come to be, and who declares to him what shall be after him? The labor of fools wearies them, because not one knows how to go to the city. Woe to you, O land, when your sovereign is a youth and your rulers feast in the morning? Blessed are you, O land, when your sovereign is the son of nobles, and your rulers feast in due season, for strength and not for drunkenness. Because of laziness the framework tumbles, and through idleness of hands the house leaks. A feast is made for laughter, and wine gladdens life, and the silver answers all. Do not curse the sovereign, even in your thought. Do not curse the rich, even in your bedroom. For a bird of the heavens conveys the voice, and a possessor of wings makes the matter known. Chapter 11. Send out your bread on the face of the waters, for after many days you shall find it. Give a portion to 7, and also to 8, for you do not know what evil might be on the earth. If the clouds are filled with rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or the north in the place where the tree falls, there it is. He who watches the wind does not sow, and he who looks at the clouds does not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of Elohim who makes all. Sow your seed in the morning, and until evening do not let your hand rest, since you do not know which prosper, this or that, or whether both alike are good. Sweet also is the light, and good for the eyes to see the sun. But if a man lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember the days of darkness, for they are many. All that is coming is futility. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart gladden you in the days of your youth, and walk in the ways of your heart, and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these Elohim brings you into right ruling. Therefore remove vexation from your heart, and put away evil from your flesh, for youth and dawn of life are futility. Chapter 12. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the guards of the house tremble, and the strong men shall bow down, when the grinders shall cease because they are few, and those that look through the windows shall become dim, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, and the sound of grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are bowed down. Furthermore, they are afraid of what is high, and of low places in the way, and the almond tree blossoms, and the grasshopper becomes a burden, and desire perishes. For man is going to his everlasting home, and the mourner shall go about the streets. Remember him, before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the jar shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to Elohim who gave it. Futility, futility, says Koheleth. All is futile. And besides being wise, Koheleth also taught the people knowledge, and he listened and sought out, set in order many proverbs. Koheleth sought to find out words of delight and words of truth rightly written. The words of the wise are like goads, and as nails driven by the masters of collections, they were given by one shepherd. And besides these, my son, be warned. The making of many books has no end, and much study is a wearying of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil. The Book of Esther, Chapter 1. And it came to be in the days of Ahasuerus. He is the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Cush, 127 provinces. In those days, when sovereign Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his reign, which is in the citadel of Shushan, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants. The power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces were before him, when he showed the riches of his esteemed reign and the splendor of his excellent greatness for many days, 180 days. And when these days were completed, the sovereign made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in the citadel of Shushan, from great to small, in the courtyard of the garden of the sovereign's palace. White and blue tapestries were fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple on silver rods and marble columns. The couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, the vessels being different from one another, with much royal wine, according to the hand of the sovereign. And drinking was according to the law. No one was compelled, for so the sovereign had ordered all the officers of his house that they should do according to each one's pleasure. Sovereigness Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which sovereign Ahasuerus owned. On the 7th day, when the heart of the sovereign was glad with wine, he ordered Mehuman, Biztha, Charbona, Bigtha, and Abgatha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 eunuchs who were in attendance in the presence of sovereign Ahasuerus, to bring sovereigness Vashti before the sovereign with her royal crown in order to show her loveliness to the people and the officials, for she was lovely to look upon. But sovereigness Vashti refused to come at the sovereign's command, brought by his eunuchs, and the sovereign was very wroth, and his rage burned within him. So the sovereign said to the wise men who understood the times, for in this way the sovereign's matter came before all who knew law and right ruling, and who were close to him, Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Merez, Marsina, Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the sovereign's face, who sat first in the reign. According to law, what is to be done to sovereigness Vashti, because she did not perform the command of sovereign Ahasuerus through the eunuchs? And Memucan answered before the sovereign and the princes, Sovereigness Vashti has misbehaved, not only toward the sovereign, but also toward all the princes and all the people who are in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus. For the matter of the sovereignness shall go forth to all women, to make their husbands despised in their eyes. And when they say, Sovereign Ahasuerus commanded sovereigness Vashti to be brought before him, but she did not come. And this day the princesses of Persia and Media shall say to all the sovereign's officials that they have heard of the matter of the sovereigness, with plenty of scorn and wrath. If it pleases the sovereign, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it does not pass away, that Vashti shall come no more before sovereign Ahasuerus. And let the sovereign give her royal position to another who is better than she. And the sovereign's decree which he makes shall be proclaimed throughout all his rule, great as it is. And all the wives give esteem to their husbands, both great and small. And the word was good in the eyes of the sovereign and the princes. And the sovereign did according to the word of Memucan. So he sent letters to all the sovereign's provinces, to each province in its own writing, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house and speak in the language of his people. Chapter 2. After these events, when the wrath of sovereign Ahasuerus had ceased, he remembered Vashti, what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the sovereign's servants who attended him said, "Let lovely young maidens be sought for the sovereign, and let the sovereign appoint officers in all the provinces of his reign, and let them gather all the lovely young maidens to the citadel of Shushan, into the women's quarters, under the hand of Hegai, the sovereign's eunuch, guardian of the women, to give their preparations. And let the young woman who pleases the sovereign be sovereigness instead of Vashti." And the word pleased the sovereign, and he did so. In the citadel of Shushan there was a certain man, a Yahudi, whose name was Mordecai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been exiled from Jerusalem with the captives who had been exiled with Jeconiah, sovereign of Yehuda, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, had exiled. And it came to be that he was raising Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was beautiful and of good appearance, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. And it came to be when the sovereign's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at the citadel of Shushan, into the hand of Hegai, that Esther too was taken to the sovereign's palace, into the hand of Hegai, guardian of the women. And the young woman pleased him, and she received loving commitment from him. So he hastened to give her preparations and her portions, and gave her 7 choice female servants from the sovereign's palace. And he moved her and her female servants to the best place in the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people or her relatives, for Mordecai had commanded her not to make it known. And every day Mordecai walked about in front of the courtyard of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what is done to her. Now when the turn of each young woman came to go into sovereign Ahasuerus, after she had completed 12 new moons, according to the regulations for the women, for the days of their preparations were completed as follows: 6 new moons with oil of myrrh, and 6 new moons with perfumes, and with the preparations of women. Thus prepared, the young woman went to the sovereign, and whatever she asked for was given to take with her from the house of the women to the sovereign's palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, into the hand of Shashagaz, the sovereign's eunuch, guardian of the concubines. She would not come in to the sovereign again unless the sovereign delighted in her and called for her by name. And when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, to come in to the sovereign, she sought no matter but what Hegai, the sovereign's eunuch, guardian of the women, advised. And Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And Esther was taken to sovereign Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th new moon, which is the new moon of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the sovereign loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor and loving commitment in his eyes more than all the maidens. And he set the royal crown upon her head and made her sovereigness instead of Vashti. And the sovereign made a great feast, the feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants. And he proclaimed a release in the provinces and gave gifts according to the means of a sovereign. And when maidens were assembled a second time, Mordecai sat within the sovereign's gate. Esther had not made known her relatives and her people yet, as Mordecai commanded her, for Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai, as when she was being raised by him. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the sovereign's gate, 2 of the sovereign's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, were wroth and sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. And the matter became known to Mordecai, who informed sovereigness Esther. And Esther spoke to the sovereign in Mordecai's name. And when the matter was searched into, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a wooden structure, and it was written in the book of the annals in the presence of the sovereign. Chapter 3. After these events, sovereign Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and exalted him and seated him higher than all the princes with him. And all the sovereign's servants who were in the sovereign's gate bowed and did obeisance to Haman, for so the sovereign had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or do obeisance. And the sovereign's servants who were in the sovereign's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the sovereign's command?" And it came to be when they spoke to him daily, he would not listen to them, that they told Haman, to see whether the words of Mordecai would stand, for he had told them that he was a Yahudi. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or do obeisance, Haman was filled with wrath. But it was despicable in his eyes to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had informed him of the people of Mordecai. Therefore Haman sought to destroy all the Yahudim who were throughout all the reign of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. In the first new moon, which is the new moon of Nisan, in the 12th year of sovereign Ahasuerus, someone cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from new moon to new moon, till it fell on the 12th month, which is the new moon of Adar. Haman then told sovereign Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your reign, whose laws are different from all people, and they do not do the sovereign's laws. Therefore it is not in the sovereign's interest to let them remain. If it pleases the sovereign, let a decree be written to destroy them, and let me pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the sovereign's treasuries." And the sovereign took his signet ring from his hand, and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Yahudim. And the sovereign said to Haman, "The silver and the people are given to you, to do with them as seems good to you." And the sovereign's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first new moon, and a decree was written, according to all that Haman commanded, to the viceroys of the sovereign, and to the governors who were over each province, and to the officials of all people, to every province according to its writing, and to every people in their language. It was written in the name of sovereign Ahasuerus, and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring. And the letters were sent by the runners into all the sovereign's provinces, to cut off, to kill, and to destroy all the Yahudim, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th new moon, which is the new moon of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. A copy of the writing, to be made law in every province, was published for all people to be ready for that day. The runners went out, hastened by the sovereign's command, and the decree was given out in the citadel of Shushan. The sovereign and Haman then sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was in confusion. Chapter 4. And Mordecai learned of all that had been done. And Mordecai tore his garments and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried out with a loud and bitter cry. And he went up to the front of the sovereign's gate, for no one might enter the sovereign's gate wearing sackcloth. And in every province where the sovereign's command and decree came, there was great mourning among the Yahudim, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. And Esther's young women and eunuchs came and told her, and the sovereigness was deeply pained, and sent garments to Mordecai to wear, and to take away his sackcloth from him. But he refused. And Esther called Hathach, one of the sovereign's eunuchs, whom he had appointed to attend her, and she gave him a command concerning Mordecai, to learn what and why this was. And Hathach went out to Mordecai, to an open space of the city in front of the sovereign's gate. And Mordecai told him all that befell him, and all about the silver that Haman had promised to pay into the sovereign's treasuries to destroy the Yahudim. And he gave him a copy of the written decree to destroy them, which was given to Shushan, to show it to Esther and explain it to her, and to command her to go into the sovereign to make supplication to him and plead before him for her people. And Hathach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the sovereign's servants and the people of the sovereign's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the sovereign who has not been called, he has but one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the sovereign holds out the golden scepter, who then shall live. But I have not been called to come into the sovereign these 30 days. And they declared to Mordecai the words of Esther. And Mordecai commanded them to answer Esther, "Do not think within yourself to escape in the sovereign's palace any more than all the other Yahudim. For if you keep entirely silent at this time, relief and deliverance shall arise for the Yahudim from another place, while you and your father's house perish. And who knows whether you have come to the reign for such a time as this?" And Esther commanded to reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Yahudim who are present in Shushan, and fast for me, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I too and my young women shall fast in the same way. Then I shall go to the sovereign, which is against the law. And if I shall perish, I shall perish." Mordecai then went away and did according to all that Esther commanded him. Chapter 5. And it came to be on the 3rd day that Esther put on royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the sovereign's palace, in front of the sovereign's house, while the sovereign sat on his royal throne in the royal house, opposite the entrance of the house. And it came to be when the sovereign saw Sovereigness Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his eyes. And the sovereign held out to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. And Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the sovereign said to her, "What is it, Sovereigness Esther? And what is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is given to you." And Esther answered, "If it pleases the sovereign, let the sovereign and Haman come today to the feast which I have prepared for him." And the sovereign said, "Get Haman at once to do as Esther has said." Then the sovereign and Haman went to the feast which Esther had prepared. And the sovereign said to Esther at the feast of wine, "What is your petition? And it is given to you. Then what is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is done." And Esther answered and said, "My petition and request is this. If I have found favor in the eyes of the sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign to give my petition and perform my request, then let the sovereign and Haman come to the feast which I make for them, and tomorrow I shall do according to the word of the sovereign." And Haman went out that day rejoicing and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the sovereign's gate, and that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. But Haman held himself in and came to his house, and he sent and called for his loved ones, and Zeresh his wife. And Haman recounted to them the esteem of his wealth and his many sons, and all in which the sovereign had promoted him, and how he had exalted him above the officials and servants of the sovereign. And Haman said, "Besides, Esther the sovereigness let no one but me come in with the sovereign to the feast which she prepared. And tomorrow too I am invited by her along with the sovereign. But all this does not suit me, as long as I see Mordecai the Yahudi sitting at the sovereign's gate." So his wife Zeresh and all his loved ones said to him, "Let a wooden structure be made, 50 cubits high, and in the morning speak to the sovereign that Mordecai be hanged on it, and go with the sovereign to the feast, rejoicing." And the word pleased Haman, and he had the wooden structure made. Chapter 6. On that night the sleep of the sovereign fled, And he commanded to bring the book of the records of the annals, and they were read before the sovereign. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the sovereign's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. Then the sovereign said, "What has been done in value or in greatness to Mordecai for this?" And the sovereign's servants who attended him said, "Naught has been done for him." And the sovereign said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had come into the outer court of the sovereign's palace to speak to the sovereign to hang Mordecai on the wooden structure that he had prepared for him. And the sovereign's servant said to him, "Look, Haman is standing in the court." And the sovereign said, "Let him come in." And when Haman come in, the sovereign asked him, "What is to be done for the man whom the sovereign delights to value?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the sovereign delight to value more than me?" And Haman answered the sovereign, "For the man whom the sovereign delights to value, let a royal robe be brought which the sovereign has worn, and a horse on which the sovereign has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. And let this robe and horse be given into the hand of one of the sovereign's most noble princes. Let them dress the man whom the sovereign delights to value, and make him ride on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, 'Thus it is done to the man whom the sovereign delights to value.'" And the sovereign said to Haman, "Hurry, take the robe and the horse as you have spoken, and do so for Mordecai, the Yahudi, who sits in the sovereign's gate. Let no word fail of all that you have spoken." And Haman took the robe and the horse and robed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square, and proclaimed before him, "Thus it is done to the man the sovereign delights to value." Then Mordecai went back to the sovereign's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning and with covered head. And when Haman related to his wife Zeresh, and all his loved ones, all that had befallen him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is from the seed of the Yahudim, you are not going to prevail against him, but certainly fall before him." While they were still speaking with him, the sovereign's eunuchs came and hurried to bring Haman to the feast which Esther had prepared. Chapter 7. And the sovereign and Haman came in to drink with sovereigness Esther. And again on the second day at the feast of wine, the sovereign said to Esther, "What is your petition, sovereigness Esther? And it is given to you. And what is your request? Up to half my reign and it is done." And sovereigness answered and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign, let my life be given to me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be cut off, to be killed, and to be destroyed. And if we had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept silent, although the adversary could not make up for the sovereign's loss." Then sovereign Ahasuerus asked sovereigness Esther, "Who is he and where is he whose heart is set to do so?" And Esther said, "The adversary and enemy is this evil Haman." Then Haman was afraid before the sovereign and the sovereigness. And the sovereign, arising in his wrath from the feast of wine, went into the palace garden. And Haman remained before sovereigness Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil had been decided against him by the sovereign. And when the sovereign returned from the palace garden to the place of the feast of wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the sovereign said, "Also to ravage the sovereigness while I am in the house?" As the word left the sovereign's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the sovereign, "Also, see the wooden structure, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the sovereign, is standing at the house of Haman." And the sovereign said, "Impale him on it." And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. Chapter 8. On that day sovereign Ahasuerus gave to sovereigness Esther the house of Haman, the adversary of the Yahudim. And Mordecai came before the sovereign, for Esther had explained what he was to her. And the sovereign took off his signet ring which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spoke to the sovereign again, and fell down at his feet, and begged him with tears to put an end to the evil of Haman the Agagite, and his plot which he had plotted against the Yahudim. And the sovereign held out the golden scepter toward Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the sovereign, and said, If it pleases the sovereign, if I have found favor in his sight, and the matter is right before the sovereign, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to bring back the letters, the plot by Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yahudim who are in all the sovereign's provinces. For how could I bear to see the evil coming to my people? Or how could I bear to see the destruction of my relatives? And sovereign Ahasuerus said to the sovereigness Esther and Mordecai the Yahudi, Look, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the wooden structure because he laid his hand on the Yahudim. Now you write on behalf of the Yahudim, as it pleases you in the sovereign's name, and seal it with the sovereign's signet ring. For a letter which is written in the sovereign's name, and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring, no one turns back. So the sovereign's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd new moon, which is the new moon of Siwan, on the 23rd day, and it was written, according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Yahudim, and to the viceroys, and the governors, and the princes of the provinces from India to Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own writing, to every people in their own language, and to the Yahudim in their own writing and in their own language. And he wrote in the name of sovereign Ahasuerus, and sealed it with sovereign signet ring, and sent letters by runners on horseback, riding on royal horses bred from speedy mares, that the sovereign has granted to the Yahudim who are in every city to be assembled and stand for their lives, to cut off, to kill, and to destroy all the power of the people or province that would distress them, little children and women, to plunder their possessions. On one day in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th new moon, which is the new moon Adar, the copy of the writing to be made law in every province was announced to all the peoples, so that the Yahudim would be ready on that day to be avenged of their enemies. The runners, riding on royal horses, went out, hastened and pressed on by the sovereign's command, and the decree was given out in the citadel of Shushan. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the sovereign, wearing royal garments of blue and white, with a great crown of gold, and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad, for the Yahudim there was light and gladness and joy and value. And in every province, and in every city where the sovereign's command and decree came, the Yahudim had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land were becoming Yahudim, for the fear of the Yahudim had fallen upon them.